Arjun Malhotra and Priya Patel seemed like the perfect couple, newlyweds with bright futures and a fairy tale wedding. But just 1 week after saying, "I do," their lives would spiral into a shocking tale of betrayal, obsession, and deadly revenge. The wedding of Arjun Malhotra and Priya Patel was a grand affair that captured the attention of everyone in their community. Friends, relatives, and neighbors gathered under the glow of golden lights, the air filled with laughter, music, and the fragrance of roses. It was the kind of wedding that people would talk about for months afterward, filled with expensive decorations, colorful outfits, and traditions carefully carried out. Arjun, a rising star in the world of software engineering, looked proud as he stood beside his bride, while Priya, who had been finishing her graduate degree, appeared radiant in her embroidered lehenga. To the outside world, they looked like the perfect couple, young and ambitious, ready to build a life together. The ceremony itself was flawless. Priya's family was proud to see her marry into a respected household, while Arjun's family admired their new daughter-in-law's grace and poise. From the dance floor to the feast, every detail seemed like a page taken from a fairy tale. Guests whispered about how lucky the two were to have found each other, with some even envying the balance of tradition and modernity their marriage represented. The wedding photographs, later shared online, painted a picture of joy, smiling faces, sparkling jewelry, and moments that seemed frozen in perfection. Yet, beneath the laughter and celebration, unnoticed by the cheering crowds, cracks already existed in the foundation of their marriage. They were small, invisible to anyone except those who might look closer. Priya carried a heart full of hope, believing that this marriage would be the beginning of something beautiful. She had no idea that within days, her dream of a perfect life would twist into a nightmare so dark that it would shock the very people who had once praised their union. Just days after the wedding, the sparkle of celebration began to fade. Priya had imagined long walks, late-night conversations, and a gentle beginning to their new life together. Instead, she found herself alone in a quiet house more often than not. Arjun was always busy, claiming deadlines at work that required late nights at the office. His excuses sounded believable at first, and Priya told herself that marriage wasn't always like the movies, that maybe this was simply what responsibility looked like. But as the nights grew longer and his absences more frequent, a gnawing unease began to grow inside her. When Arjun was home, he seemed distracted, his eyes glued to his phone or his laptop. He would smile politely at her questions, but rarely offered details. Priya noticed the small things first, the way he avoided her gaze when she asked about his day, how he left the room to take certain calls, or how he would step outside just to text. She tried to ignore the heavy feeling pressing down on her, convincing herself that it was nothing more than her adjusting to a new life. After all, wasn't she supposed to be happy? The disappointment quietly crept into her evenings. She would cook meals, waiting eagerly to share them, only to pack the food away when he didn't show. She would plan moments together, only to hear him say he was too tired. The warmth she had expected in her new marriage felt more like a cold distance that was widening each day. Priya did not yet know the truth, but her instincts whispered that something was wrong. What she didn't realize was that the perfect life she thought she had built was already slipping through her fingers, one unexplained absence at a time. One quiet afternoon, while Arjun was in the shower, Priya noticed his phone buzzing repeatedly on the nightstand. At first, she resisted the urge to look. She wanted to trust him, to believe that her doubts were nothing more than the insecurities of a newlywed. But curiosity and fear pressed against her chest, stronger than her self-control. Finally, with trembling hands, she unlocked the phone. What she found shattered every illusion she had carefully held onto. The screen lit up with a series of messages from a woman named Madison. The words were filled with affection, playful remarks, and plans for secret meetings. They weren't the kind of messages exchanged between co-workers. They were intimate, personal, and undeniable. Scrolling further, Priya's breath caught as she saw photos of Arjun with Madison, smiling in places he had never taken her. Restaurants, hotel rooms, even simple selfies that spoke volumes of closeness and comfort. Each message revealed a truth that felt like knives piercing into her chest. Madison wasn't a new presence. She had been there long before the wedding. Their conversations hinted at months of passion and secrecy, moments stolen behind Priya's back. Even worse, the text showed no signs of ending. Instead, Arjun promised Madison that their connection was stronger than ever, writing words of devotion that he had never spoken to his wife. Priya dropped the phone onto the bed, her hands shaking. The betrayal was complete, undeniable, and cruel. She had walked into this marriage full of love and hope, while her husband had carried another woman in his heart all along. What hurt the most wasn't just the lies. It was the realization that their entire union had been nothing but a carefully hidden facade. From that moment on, Priya's life no longer moved forward in the way it once had. Each day was consumed by a gnawing obsession with the truth she had uncovered. The cheerful bride who once dreamed of building a home had disappeared, replaced by a woman quietly drowning in anger, humiliation, and disbelief. She could not understand how Arjun had stood beside her at the wedding mandip, promising loyalty and love, while secretly building a life with another woman. That betrayal burned like acid inside her, and it began to change the way she saw everything around her. Priya started watching him more closely. She learned the rhythm of his lies, the sudden meetings, the late-night drives, the messages he tried to hide. She began checking his phone every chance she got, scrolling through call logs and emails, piecing together the secret relationship that had been thriving under her nose. Her nights were sleepless, her mind replaying the images of Arjun with Madison, every laugh and smile feeling like a slap across her face. One evening, her suspicions pushed her beyond silent observation. She followed him in her car, her heart pounding as she trailed at a safe distance. When he finally pulled into a hotel parking lot, Priya's worst fears solidified into reality. She sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, as she watched Arjun step out of his car and greet Madison with a familiarity that spoke louder than any words. The sight seared itself into her memory. That night marked a turning point. No longer was Priya simply a suspicious wife. She was now a woman consumed by rage, humiliation, and a growing hunger for retribution. The betrayal had transformed her, and the seeds of something far darker had quietly begun to take root. Priya's mind became a storm of thoughts she could no longer control. The more she replayed the images of Arjun and Madison together, the more her anger deepened. She realized that confronting him directly would achieve nothing. He would deny everything, charm his way out, and leave her feeling powerless again. If she wanted justice, she would have to take matters into her own hands. Slowly, methodically, she began to plan. She spent hours researching ways to act without leaving obvious evidence. Online forums, articles, and guides became her textbooks. Among them, one method caught her attention: a subtle poison that could be added to food, undetectable in casual observation but deadly in effect. She memorized the steps, learning how much to use and how to mask its presence in ordinary dishes. Priya bought supplies under the guise of routine household needs, careful to leave no trail. Every action she took was precise. She calculated times, rehearsed movements, and studied Arjun's daily habits. She watched Madison's routine through social media, noting when she would most likely visit. The more she planned, the colder and more detached she became. The woman who once dreamed of a happy marriage now measured every moment in terms of opportunity and consequence. By the end of the week, Priya's plan was fully formed. It was no longer just about betrayal. It had become about power, control, and revenge. The humiliation she had suffered had turned into a calculated obsession. Every detail was in place, every step carefully rehearsed. In her mind, the moment of reckoning was approaching, and there was no turning back. The transformation from wrong bride to meticulous planner was complete. The night arrived with a deceptive calm. Priya had prepared the house meticulously, ensuring everything appeared ordinary, a picture of domestic bliss. She cooked a lavish dinner, the aroma filling the rooms with an inviting warmth that masked the deadly secret hidden within. Each ingredient, measured and mixed with precision, carried the poison she had studied so carefully. Her movements were calm, almost serene, belying the storm of emotion and calculation inside her. Arjun returned home later than usual, tired from work but unsuspecting. Priya greeted him with a polite smile, serving the meal as if nothing were wrong. He ate without hesitation, commenting on the taste while never suspecting the danger that lay in each bite. Time seemed to stretch as she watched him, the seconds ticking like a clock counting down to the inevitable. Madison arrived shortly after, slipping into the house quietly as they had done countless times before. Priya welcomed her with the same calm politeness, concealing the rage that had been building over the past week. Madison joined Arjun at the table, laughing softly at something he said, unaware that their laughter was about to end in tragedy. Minutes later, the effects of the poison began to take hold. Arjun's smile faltered, and Madison clutched her stomach in confusion. Priya remained composed, observing as panic and pain replaced the joy and intimacy that had once filled the room. Both struggled, their bodies betraying them as the deadly substance coursed through their systems. In those final moments, there was no escape, no chance for remorse. By the time help could have arrived, it was too late. Arjun and Madison collapsed side by side, their lives extinguished in a cruel, calculated act of vengeance. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, now held only silence and the weight of Priya's meticulously executed plan. When the authorities arrived, Priya presented herself as the grieving newlywed, her face pale and eyes red from apparent worry. She spoke calmly, recounting the evening as if she had been an innocent bystander to a sudden tragedy. At first, the officers accepted her story, moved by the image of a young wife who had just lost both her husband and his companion. But as they began their investigation, subtle inconsistencies started to surface. The toxicology report revealed traces of poison in both victims' systems. What had seemed like a sudden, inexplicable death now hinted at deliberate intent. Detectives examined the house and noticed that the food, meticulously prepared, had signs of tampering. Receipts and online purchase records showed Priya had bought the chemical substances under false pretenses just days before the incident. Her careful planning, once invisible, was slowly coming to light. Investigators delved into Arjun's phone and found a trail of activity showing Priya's escalating obsession. Search histories, notes, and suspicious behavior indicated she had been monitoring him constantly. Her online queries about poisons and undetectable methods for causing harm painted a chilling picture. It became clear that the deaths were not accidental. They were the result of a carefully calculated plan executed with precision. Neighbors and friends, who had once admired Priya as the perfect bride, were shocked to learn the truth. The story of betrayal had spiraled into murder, and what had appeared to be a domestic tragedy was revealed to be a meticulously orchestrated act of revenge. Priya's calm exterior, once convincing, now contrasted starkly with the damning evidence slowly unfolding against her. The investigation made one thing painfully clear. This was no crime of passion. It was premeditation, cold and deliberate. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with people eager to witness the trial that had captivated the community. Priya sat silently, her expression unreadable, as the prosecution laid out the evidence piece by piece. The story they told was chilling. How a newlywed bride, consumed by betrayal, had meticulously planned and executed the deaths of her husband and his lover. Photographs, toxicology reports, online searches, and receipts all painted a damning portrait of a woman driven by calculated revenge rather than fleeting emotion. The defense tried to portray Priya as a victim of emotional trauma, someone pushed to the edge by an unimaginable betrayal. They argued that her actions were not premeditated in cold blood, but rather the result of overwhelming grief and humiliation. But the jury struggled to reconcile the level of planning with the argument of a momentary lapse. The evidence was overwhelming, and every detail suggested forethought, careful timing, and precise execution. After days of testimony and cross-examination, the jury deliberated. They returned with a verdict that was both swift and final. Guilty on charges of double homicide. Priya was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge's words were stern, emphasizing that no betrayal, no matter how deep, justified such a calculated act of violence. Outside the courtroom, the community struggled to comprehend the shocking reality. The story that had begun as a fairy tale wedding ended in tragedy, leaving families and friends grappling with disbelief. What had seemed like love, hope, and joy had hidden a darkness that erupted into deadly consequences. Priya's tale became a haunting reminder that betrayal, when coupled with obsession and rage, could transform even the most innocent beginnings into a nightmare no one could have imagined.